So welcome to this module on the economics of dairy goat udder health. It's a topic that could undoubtedly use more research to lessen the variation of the outcomes that we see in the current research on this topic. Why is dairy goat udder health important? So let's start with a research project from the Czech Republic that concludes when the somatic cell count is increased, the quality of goat milk is actually decreased, its technological properties, and thus the overall economy of milk and dairy production is actually reduced. So research, however, will show conflicting results as to the udder health economics, from sometimes little to no correlation to actually substantial economic benefits with the decrease in somatic cell count, or the SCC. So the udder health of dairy goats seems less influential to profitability relative to, say, dairy cows. However, udder health management as measured by somatic cell counts can still impact goat productivity, but just know that there's some challenges to the relationship of somatic cell count with the udder health economics. But still, we think that the somatic cell count is the best measure we have to manage udder health. When we take a look at clinical versus subclinical mastitis, realize that clinical mastitis is visible to the naked eye and often accounts for around 30% of mastitis. What's of more concern is subclinical mastitis, and that's defined in two different ways in various literature pieces. First of all, by a high somatic cell count, because there is a correlation quite positively. And the second way is just positive bacteriological culture if we try to culture the milk. So positive bacterial infection tends to be increased in somatic cell counts, but possible because of a dilution effect, and sometimes that's the challenge. So the less milk yield increases somatic cell count per milliliter, and it's just a thought to keep in mind, that correlation. So we realize that dairy goats can actually lose profit through, first of all, decreased milk yield, the MY, clinical treatment costs, discarded milk, premature culling and death, decreasing genetic potential, decreased reproduction, which actually comes out as the number of kids might be a little bit lessened during birth. The vet and labor costs and reduced milk payments are all ways that subclinical mastitis can cause profit losses. So somatic cell count gives the idea of mastitis losses. This is some Spanish research where the milk yield can drop by more than 11% in goats with greater than 1 million cells per milliliter, and by almost 20% in goats with greater than 2 million cells. So even though there may be a dilution effect, that correlation still seems pretty darn strong. So taking that Spanish research discussion and trying to make it relative to what we have in the USA, so milk yield and the fat and the protein contents are all within the range of estimates that are recorded for the same breeds we might have here or for the American Nubian breed. The milk yield may be smaller, and the contents were higher than results found in the Alpine and the Saanen goats that belong to the American Dairy Goat Association. So the Alpine and Saanen are kind of like the Holstein cows of the dairy breed. So they tend to produce more milk, less components as a percentage. So the results showed the suitability of somatic cell count as a valid tool, and that's the important part. We do feel this is a very valid tool for estimating the magnitude of yield and the economic losses in dairy goats. So when we look at the means for somatic cell count, they're very similar to the somatic cell count means that are reported in other studies around the world and other breeds as well. So in conclusion, this Spanish research project can relate to our U.S. goat dairies with very important milk income losses per goat and day, which was anywhere from 9.6% to 31.6%. And it was evidenced as somatic cell count level increased above that 1 million somatic cell count level. So we can also use the Czech Republic research project as an example of what could be possible for economic changes due to udder health. And using their white short-haired goats, that's expressed in euro currency, which currently is about 1.06 US dollars or so. But bottom line, you can pretty much take a euro to a dollar and try to equate this. So decreasing of annual revenues per goats are around $90 for milk yield, around $30 for fat content. Protein sometimes actually increases a little bit, 16 euros or $16 for conception rate, and around 20 euros for litter size. So you can see the magnitude. If you add all those up, it's actually pretty significant with it. So we also realize that production declined about 58 kilograms of milk sold So that's over 120 pounds, minus 0.21 for the kids born. So unfavorable changes that happen in flock structure just because we're lessening the number of females born per 100 goats for replacement, and just also the lifetime of the goats, where they actually reduce their lifetime by about a half a year due to some udder health economics. So let's move on to some French research. Taking a look at 254 dairy goat farms and just the economic impact of milk yield and composition after 200 days of lactation. So if we break these down into three different groups, the first group of less than 750,000 somatic cell counts, the second group between 750,000 and 1.75 million, and the third group at over 1.75 million. So if we take a subsample, and there are 366 groups in the subsample here, the average milk loss of milk production from the group 2 goats compared to group 1 was 55 kilograms, very similar to the previous slide. In another subsample of 41, the milk production loss of group 3 goats compared to group 1 actually reached 132 kilograms. Okay, so again, a kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So for all of the 404 groups that they studied, and taking a look at groups 2 and groups 3, they had a lower fat content, and they also had higher protein content with it. And so the bottom line is there's some serious economic impact to the somatic cell count and the udder health of the dairy goats. So now there's also some alternative research challenges and thoughts regarding the use of somatic cell count as a measurement and using that as the main indicator of udder health. So this one actually came up through the Journal of Dairy Science. So very well peer-reviewed, and just some of the thought process that maybe that increased somatic cell count is because of a dilution effect. As milk yield decreases, that somatic cell count increases and that lower production. So just realize that there's some conflicting thought processes regarding the use of somatic cell count as a measurement for udder health. So the Dutch also tried to put together a model that I thought was kind of important just for us to take a look at. So it kind of challenges the cost of mastitis a little bit as well, because there are some research projects that say that there really isn't that big of a difference, trying to compare these. There's other ones that show some pretty significant changes. So Model 1 has a cost of goat mastitis of only €5 or $5 per goat per year. Model 2, which I think is probably more common, around €65, $65 per goat per year, with a production loss accountable for about 68% or about 2/3 of that loss, contagious transmission for 17% of the loss, and just the increased chances of clinical flare-up for about 15%. And then Model 3 actually takes a look at the treating of does during lactation, but basically kind of giving us the feel that it doesn't really pay for itself during lactation because of milk withdrawal and just that loss of milk production that they can actually sell out. So again, some challenges to the economic impact of udder health as well. So, but know that the affirmation areas are truly significant in the region of $80 to $100 per goat. Sometimes they get in $150, even up to $200 for a high somatic cell count goat versus a low somatic cell count goat. So for your own dairy, again, just consider how high somatic cell count might lose profit versus low somatic cell count. So again, some of those things that I mentioned earlier about the milk yield and the clinical treatment costs, the discarded milk, premature culling and death, that genetic potential is real. The decrease in reproduction, the number of kids born, that's definitely real and backed up by some good research as well. But then also consider the time in both vet and also your own labor costs and the reduced milk payments if you're selling your milk to some place that actually has some premiums or some deducts for high somatic cell count milk. So premiums for better quality, deducts for lower quality milk. So if you have any more questions in regards to this topic, you can always email us at dairygoatextension@iastate.edu. And from there, again, Larry Tranel, Iowa State University Extension Dairy Field Specialist. Thanks for watching.